flu.
And welcome on behalf of the Upper Salford Volunteer Fire Company and the Ladies Auxiliary of the Upper Salford Volunteer Fire Company to the newly refurbished banquet hall. We hope you like what you see and see that we are making progress as we always do. And tonight you're a part of making history together. So thank you for coming. Yes, it was 2016, but it was the 275th, and we're of course getting ready to celebrate the 75th anniversary of our fire company. So this is very important. In the back, we of course have our Upper Salford Historical Society table, and just some things that you should be aware of besides getting one of these great ones. We also have information about the Friends of the Mine House, which was last month's meeting, so if you weren't there, you might want to get this and just take a look at the postcard. We also have a listing of the upcoming events in Upper Salford, which says about jumping into Upper Salford and has chock full of information that takes you through the month of May till August. And these are all the things you want to stay in Upper Salford for. So be a part of making history together. And the last one, of course, is everything you can do to become a part of our society. If you have some free time, we've got tons of things for you to do. Just some comfort pieces. Of course, we can open the windows in case you start to feel too warm. And of course, the bathrooms are just out the back there and down the hall, and use them as need. Before we go any further, I would like to just highlight one of the things that we have been given. And does anybody know what it is?
Soldering iron.
Yes. And what was it powered by?
Kerosene.
Nope.
Acetylene?
Acetylene, right. And acetylene, I'll just pass this around, was how they lit the Perkiomen Inn, which predated the Spring Mountain House.
Oh.
And most of us never saw it because of fire. It just completely burnt to the ground. And so when you see something like this, realize, of course you went around and saw some of the devastation, why it's so terribly important that we have this fire company here, and that we have just the fact that it's been volunteers who have been putting their lives on the line. And that's what the 75th is about. It's about honoring those individuals who have virtually put their lives in harm's way to protect us and our property. So without any further ado, I'd like the members, any past or present members of the Volunteer Fire Company or the Ladies Auxiliary, to please stand. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Rick Sachs. And Rick, you're going to have to tell the joke, I'm sure.
Oh, no, I promise not to. We didn't want to clear the place out. Yes, if we could just ask you to start with the pledge to the flag, please. Thank you all.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to start with first thanking you all for coming tonight, and also thank Pat Hughes and all the gang from the Historical Society for putting together a lot of the history and just kind of preparing for tonight. I got to learn a lot of things that I didn't know, from the early days of the fire company, so it's been a good educational process for me. So I'll go on through it. If anybody has questions as we go, feel free to just let me know. I'll try not to drag on too much. But again, thanks for coming out. I'm just going to do a general kind of run through the history. As I promised, there will be no bad jokes. And they'll tell you I don't know any good ones. So basically, the history of the Upper Salford Volunteer Fire Company. And the station logo, that's obviously not our station in the top. It was just a generic one. But early on, before the fire company existed, the township was protected by the Firemen's Protection Association that worked with the surrounding communities, Harleysville, Schwanksville, Spring Mountain, Green Lane, to provide fire coverage. not sure what kind of equipment they had at that point to use, but I'm sure it was a pretty difficult time. And you can see one of the notes for a advertisement ticket for a Firemen's Protection Association Grand Roast Turkey Supper that was held in Salford in the hall, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Barb, it would have been the hall on the top of the, what would have been Sterner's garage at that point across the street. So early on, the fundraising's always been the challenge of things from the very beginning.
I'll take 2 tickets for 50 cents.
You got it. The turkey's still from 1931 there. It's a little hard. So basically, the birth of the fire company is saying about 1946, Myron Sterner, who had the garage across the street, was on his way home, and something caught his eye down the street. He could see it was a fire in a window. It was a shade and a curtain burning, and he and some of the others in the area got to work, got the fire out, and then it was those experiences and realizing how, difficult things could be, and how basically, the problems, if there was an issue, you couldn't really get the help you needed. So they worked, and a group of concerned citizens assembled over in the Lodge Hall on top of Sterner's garage, and in 1947, they gathered to discuss, forming the fire company itself, so something a little more formal than the Firemen's the Protection Association. And with that, they said that folks came from all the villages in the township: Salfordville, Bergie, Waxhaw, Salford Station, Hendricks, and Kratz, to work on the forming of the fire company. So picture the garage at that point, and at that time where they were meeting on the second floor to discuss the formation of the fire company. And as we'll see in a little bit, when they finally got a fire truck, they needed a place to put it. So for a period, they kept it in the back of his garage until he needed the space for his own operations use. Wouldn't you love to have those gas pumps today? And some of the first officers in the company, when they switched, when they founded the fire company, they looked at the members that had been in the Fire Protective Association, and if they chose to join into the fire company, they were, welcomed in. But the first officers, as you can see, for present, I won't read through them, you can see them, but certainly a lot of familiar names as the original persons in the township here. And then, of course, as they got the fire company going, one of the issues, because we all know about hydrants in the township, they had the dam behind essentially the Poatsy's Hotel, I guess backward, just down from where Ted and Mary Ann's house is now. But they needed to do some repairing on the fire dam to make it usable, and kept that as a water source there for in case of emergency use. But love the cars too. And in case anybody doesn't know, as you go down Walford Road now, there's the concrete structure, because later it was basically a concrete structure built, so it was dug in, so as the natural water came down the stream there, it would fill into the tank, and then there were pipes mounted in it, so to get the water, the fire truck would just hook up to the connection to one of the standpipes there, and draft, to fill the tankers. So, of course, one of the important things is to have a fire engine, since a lot of buckets aren't going to do much. So in 1947, they purchased a 1929 Hahn fire engine from the Huntington Valley Fire Company for $525, which is amazing when you think about it. If you go to buy a fire truck now, you have to add 3 zeros to that. And that's without the equipment on it. And as I mentioned, that for a period, that truck was housed over in Sterner's garage. And again, it was soon determined that more permanent housing was needed. We'll be coming up to the aspect of buying this property, but essentially the structure that was in the back of this property, once this was purchased, was used as a concession stand for carnivals and fundraisers, and the truck was then moved from Sterner's garage and housed in that concession stand for a period. And the siren was added so that they could summon the firefighters. As noted, it was controlled by Frank Poatsy at the Salfordville Hotel, so if a call came in for a fire, he could trip the siren to alert the rest of the volunteers to get their rear ends down here. So with that building, though, it didn't have heat or anything, so it was difficult for maintaining the trucks, and hence something better was needed. So that's the original structure out back that was the concession stand for the carnivals. But you can see it had the garage door where the truck was parked in there when not in use. And a little ways back, when it was still there, the hope was to try to preserve that. And it was very difficult because it was kind of far gone. And then, of course, the entire inside of it was sheathed with asbestos transite panels. So it was another difficulty. That's just a side view of that, and recent photo. I don't know, somewhere we might have, there's old photos of it in its heyday. So there's the 1929 Hahn fire engine parked out front here after this structure had been built, and we'll be getting to the kind of what led up to this structure and everything being constructed. So, but sure had style, didn't it? So the first true fire station, as it said, in 1947, land was purchased here along Old Skipback Road, and for the whopping price of $1,500, which again is pretty amazing. And then the firehouses, that you see here at that point prior to the addition was constructed, and it said after much debate, about the size, the design, and everything, because that's usually what happens with us here in the fire department. You're buying a truck or something, and of course there's 52 different opinions and stuff, so it takes a little while to get a consensus. But eventually they got a consensus, and the station was built with 2 garage bays, but double deep, so you could put 2 trucks in the back here and have 2 trucks in the front, so it would hold 4 trucks. And originally along the wall were all the racks for the fireman's gear. And you can see the cost of that building was $15,000. And it was finally completed and dedicated in 1952. Barb, I think remodeling costs more than that now, right? So also in 1948, they looked at the need for fire police, because one of the problems you get at all the fire scenes is traffic control, crowd control, and kind of helping people to get directed around the places where roads may be closed. So they basically appointed a committee to start the fire police unit, and it was voted in February 1948 meeting with the first members listed there. But the part I liked was that the company voted to purchase them each a hat and a badge. So the key parts, So, and it says, as noted, there's been a continuous fire police unit here in Upper Salford ever since. And it's certainly a critical aspect of the company, because, so many times if you've got main roads blocked, people need to know where to go, how to get around it, and that's an absolute critical thing, and also for getting additional fire vehicles into the scene. Frank Coetzee, one of the early founding members of the fire company, he served as a firefighter and then later as a fire police chief, and as noted, he at the hotel had the switch to turn the siren on to tell everybody to get down here when a fire call came in on the phone there.
And he treated us well after practices on Thursday night.
Right, okay. So that was a good perk, eh? And of course the ladies auxiliary is a crucial aspect of the company, and the number of members here that have been doing it for quite a while, and I still think Barb started when she was like 4 or something, working with the ladies auxiliary. But as it was organized in May 12, 1947 with 27 ladies present, and they held their meetings in the Lodge Hall, also above the garage at the Salford, next to the Salford Hotel. So the same place where the original meetings were held, planning the fire company and putting it all together. And as it notes, all the different fundraisers the Ladies Auxiliary has done over the year to support the fire company and the structure and everything associated with the fire company. And one of the long-running ones was the turkey supper. And basically that was always held on the last Saturday in October, which makes sense, get it in before Thanksgiving. And it began as a fundraiser for the Fire Protection Association before the fire company existed, as witnessed by the first slide where you can see from the 1930s they were advertising for the turkey supper. So in addition, it's amazing, I never knew all these other things the ladies did. So fundraisers included creating hand-embroidered linens, which the ladies embroidered and sold at dinners, carnivals, and other functions. They included pillowcases, bureau scarves, handkerchiefs, tea towels, and aprons. They also had bingo games, card parties, bake sales, and record hops for teens, and sold bottles of vanilla and calendar towels, date books, and tote bags. So that's a pretty versatile lunch, I'd say.
Are there any of those embroidered items here at the firehouse?
I haven't seen any. I don't know, Pat, Barb, if any, you know if anything survived that we have examples of?
I have some at home, but I mean, I don't know that they were made back then, but I do have some hand embroidered things that were made.
It'd be interesting trying to get people together to do that today. So there's Barb, the penny auctions, one of the big fundraisers. The ladies had the penny auctions twice a year. Ignore the guy up on the right. I had to put this picture in to get Barb's in there.
And if you've never gone, you're missing it. Oh, look at it. That's exactly what it's like, even today.
Are you having one this year?
September 17th.
So not a spring,
Put
but a
it
fall.
put it on your calendar. You haven't lived in Upper Salford until you've gone to it. I'm telling you, it really is a hoot.
I've probably been 50 of them.
Yeah, that's excellent. My wife would always go, and I'd stay home, and then one time she decided to take me along, and she didn't win anything that time, so I got booted.
Our thing was, we don't take bags, because
Right.
that was like the hat,
jinx
and
it.
you never won anything.
Right.
You had to like pile it up under your table, so everybody noticed you were the big
Right. Those key parts. But then, also, and again, talking about penny auctions, which it started the spring and fall in the 1960s. And for many years, other big event was the toy sale, where the ladies would get toys donated. If your children outgrew them, they'd get donated here. The ladies would clean things up, organize them, price them, and have the big sale down in the engine room. So basically, through their sweat and tears, it was pure profit after that for the fire company. And then, of course, the other big event being the Folk Festival and the food concessions at the Folk Festival. And the Ladies Auxiliary had long run the pizza kitchen at the Folk Fest, which
Are you going to do it again this year?
they're supposed to be having it. I assume there'll be the food concession. It won't be like it was in the old days with all the menu, but it will probably be kind of like the last one that they had there with the reduced menus, my guess. But I guess
What will
that's...
the fire company be there?
Mhm.
And stuff?
Yeah. So then comes as you start looking at more fire equipment being needed. So in 1957, the 1929 Hahn, I guess, became a little worn out, and the company looked for a replacement. They purchased the 1957 International John Dean 750 gallon per minute pumper, and the price was $15,828. And the truck was later numbered as 78-22, and when the numbering system was adopted for the trucks. And it was sold in 1989 from the fire company, sat in the barn in Salfordville until the fire company got the opportunity to buy it back. In February 2022, through the hard work of Chief Engineer Sheldon Smith and Engineer Greg Kunkel, the engine 7822 was restored to run on its own power for the first time since 1997. And it had been one of the first new trucks that the Upper Salford Fire Company received. So you can see the truck when it was new and now, with Sheldon and the guys there, Greg standing next to it. So he plans to keep that as a historical piece to be used for parades and through volunteer efforts working on it and restoring it further. And one of the other early fundraisers that was an interesting thing was due to the Lewis family and having the Lilliput Farms, they graciously worked with the fire company to sponsor horse shows at the farm. And stated there was 8 of these. There were 8 of these horse shows altogether, but it was eventually stopped due to the extreme amount of labor required by all. It's kind of like what was happening with the folk festival events. Just so much manpower needed, and if you can't get enough people to pull it together, it kind of withers. But the Lewis family was great, and they continued to help the fire company, with the shows, and the money that was generated through having those horse shows helped with the purchase of some additional equipment. So as on June 10, 1963, the company took delivery of a used 1956 International 1,300-gallon oil tanker from Young's Oil for $1,600, and the truck was converted by a company called Harwick at a cost of $1,870 to be used for fire company use. One of the important things was getting that flammable oil out of there that doesn't work well when you spray that on fire. And then in November 1966, the company took delivery of a Dodge Power Wagon chassis for $28.28, and the body was built by Hahn and the pump by Hale for a price of $46.23, and that truck was used for many years as the brush truck. It was only retired a couple of years ago after an accident, and the frame was bent, so that truck was sold and was replaced by an ATV. But one of the original programs from the horse shows at Lilliput Farms, I don't know if anybody here can open up or got to any of those events. This is a photo of some of the members that worked and helped out for the horse shows. Fundraiser held at Lilliput Farms. I can't tell, are they smiling or do they look worn out? And that was the 1956 tanker after being reconditioned and fitted for the fire company use. And there's the Dodge Power Wagon. That it was the last truck in the station that was a stick shift vehicle, and it got to the point where there weren't too many people that could drive the stick shift vehicle. But that truck just kept running, and when some of the other companies around had more modern brush trucks, they'd get out there, they'd get stuck, they'd break down, and that thing was like the Timex. It just kept on going. Another shot of the front of the station here, showing the 56 tanker, the 66 brush truck, and the 57 engine. Sorry, it's not in color. Should we do another one coming? There's a good shot on the side of the station. And basically, what we're highlighting here is a 1973 Ford truck with a Hahn engine, Hahn pumper system fire truck body on it. It had been purchased brand new, 1,000 gallons per minute, for a price of $43,242. See that increasing trend of prices there. But I guess the original construction had some difficulties, and it wasn't accepted for service until February 1974. But that's the truck right out here in front on the right-hand side of the picture.
It had some problems after it was delivered too.
Right.
74 was the first year that all the pollution stuff was really mandated. And it would be hard to start.
Okay.
It would be difficult running. I remember if you hit the throttle to shut the pump down,
Yeah.
all at once, it would sit there in diesel. You had to slowly turn it down. Thanks to our government.
A few idiosyncrasies with that one, eh?
Yeah.
And then it ended up getting a sister truck that was 1977 Ford Salisbury tanker, and it replaced the old converted oil tanker, and this one had 1,800 gallons. And if I'm recalling correctly, when these two trucks were sold off, I got to drive that truck over to Little's and drive it up onto the flatbed. It was a collector from California, bought a tanker, and the guy driving his truck said, oh yeah, the guy's pretty wealthy. He owns an airport in California, and he uses one old hangar for his fire truck collection. So that went to a collector, and I believe the engine went to a fire company in Texas. So we probably won't be getting them back. And then during the 1980s, the brick garage that's out behind the station, two-bay garage, was added to basically be able to store extra equipment, fundraising equipment such as the French fry trailer and other items used at the folk festival for fundraising. And some points, fire trucks were stored in there. And today the garage is basically used for groundskeeping equipment and some of the items for folk festival fundraising and other activities. And around that same time, a Dodge van was purchased. I don't have a photo of that in here, but we probably all saw it at some point or other. It was used at some points to carry vehicle rescue equipment, some points just to get personnel to training, to the fire academy and stuff, to haul people back and forth to Folk Festival, where people were volunteering at Folk Fest. And that eventually got sold off. I understand it was still somewhere in the area. So if you see this red and white Dodge van, I think they had to take the upper Salford off of it, but it may still live today. And one of the trucks coming after that was the 1989 Spartan FMC pumper. So a shot of that with the group in front of it, fine looking bunch, isn't it? And of course still a truck with the open back cab. As you notice, the older Ford truck had the open back cab. And this was the last one the station had because the rules were basically pushing towards having fully enclosed cabs. So it's one of those things that it was definitely fun riding back there. You probably remember too, on the old Ford in the back, the center seat there was right over the engine. So in the summer you like baked, but in the winter it was where everybody wanted to sit.
I remember also riding on the tailboard.
Okay.
That was fun. Before they had the straps.
Right? So you just kind of hold
We just hung on the rail.
Yeah. So then, later in the 1990s, as the fire company grew, they erected the pole barn that's down back to move the French fry trailer down there and other larger pieces of gear, including the stand that was set up over there at Folk Fest. You know, it was just a paved site that the fire company had, and all of the walls, the partitions, were all stacked on a large trailer that was kept in the pole barn. So when Folk Fest time came, that was hauled over to the fest, and kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, all the pieces came down, and hopefully you had enough people that remembered from year before where each of the pieces went, and they all got screwed together and screened roof sections over them so the flies didn't get in. So a lot of other things have been stored back there. At some points when trucks were out of service, they'd be placed back there for a while. And then also we had other times where other stations needed a place to store a truck for a while. And so we had visiting fire trucks in the pole barn. And as this station in '94, as the addition was put on to this station, the current engine room and everything, it added the new offices, radio room, engineer's room, and other storage facilities. And this building, the 1952 structure that includes this, the kitchen behind it, and the basement where the old radio room and lounge area used to be, was remodeled. And you can see basically a lot of it was based on help from donations. Spring Hill Realty was a big contributor with materials and donations for doing the remodel. And at that point, the old basement meeting room was converted to a lounge area because the meetings were then held up here. And the cost of the project for the addition and all the remodeling was $429,000. And as the state, again, back to volunteer help, the cost was kept down by numerous donations from local businesses and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears from company membership coming out and doing stuff that people could do on their own if they had a set skill and could help with something. They were put to use. So it helped save the taxpayers money and helped save so that donation money could then be used for new hoses and SCBAs or other equipment that was crucial. And a picture from a newspaper article, the inside of the garage bay, the current bay, showing the Hahn engine in there, and then the 1966 Power Wagon at the back end of it. But certainly a lot more space than trying to squeeze 4 trucks into this room. And especially as the trucks got bigger, it wouldn't have worked anyway. Fundraising projects, certainly a crucial thing. One of the things that was done for help with the work on the station was the sale of bricks that are in the dedicated memorial wall out in front, because as the original garage doors that were here are sealed up on this end. You can still see them outside there, but the wall is out there. So somebody feel free sometime on a nice day to take a look and see the names of the folks that provided donations for the work on it. And again, being a rural fire company, our township doesn't have a dedicated fire tax. It's something that's been discussed and debated for a while and probably will occur at some point, but this company runs on fundraising by the members, the public, the people that donate when the help letter is sent out, the people that come help with the folk festival and other fundraising events, and then also the township through the general fund provides assistance with a split cost, an 80-20 split when a new truck's purchased. So at that point, the members, we have to come up with donations and things to pay the 20%, and the township pays the 80%. And again, the fundraiser included numerous dinners, chicken barbecues, the annual fund drive, that's the help letter that comes out, the Philadelphia Folk Festival, and basically, as everybody knows, that had been held regularly in the township in August, except for during COVID. And it's basically a major effort to complete that event and provide all the labor that's needed there. I have to say, I personally found that as the most tiring weekend I ever deal with in the year. But it had certainly been one of the biggest fundraisers for the fire company. And other events, things that have been come up with since, including more chicken barbecues, pulled pork sandwich sales, Super Bowl soup sales, and the food truck mania events that started recently that were held over at Spring Mountain Ski Slope, and there are others planned. So everybody keep watching the fire company website for upcoming events. And one of the other minor purchases, 1994 also, was a Chevy pickup truck that was used for everything from traffic control, plowing the parking lot, again, taking people to training events at the fire academies, and just hauling stuff back and forth from folk festival or other fundraisers as needed. A difficult event in 1997 was when the current fire chief at that time, Jim Kinley, was killed in a motorcycle accident on Berge Road. If you hadn't seen it, there's a display case out front with his bunker gear in there, and information as a tribute to his service to the fire company, and tragic loss due to a motorcycle accident. And of course, the difficult thing is that this station was called to the scene, so all the people that were members at that point end up going there and finding it's, their chief. It's tough enough when it's somebody you don't know, but that was even more difficult. Now we get to the more recent vehicles, the 1999 Freightliner tanker, which for a period after this was purchased, the old Hahn tanker and engine were here, so there was the FMC engine, this tanker, and then the two Ford trucks and the brush truck. Eventually, as these other trucks, the newer vehicles came in, and that's when the two Fords were sold off. But greatly expanded capabilities with the water capacity, and you can't see it on this side, there's hose on this side of the truck, but the other side has the porta pond. You probably had a lot tougher times dealing with them before the thing would lower down and kind of self-unload.
It was like a canvas swimming pool at the top of the tank.
So you had to pull it down from there.
And get it down.
Yeah,
there was no jet dump back then.
Right. Yeah, because what he's referencing is on this truck, there on the other side, there's a rack with the porta pond in it that folds out. And literally with the press of a button, that flips down. Two people can take it off, set it up, and then the water's dumped into it. And they're designed with the tankers on each of the back sides, and then the rear of the truck, there's a jet dump. So the driver can basically pull up from whichever side he's on at that porta pond, just press a button, and in a minute or two, the whole capacity of the tanker will dump out into that pond.
Yeah, the old tanker had a porta pump mounted on the back.
So you had to fire that up to pump the water out.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot more work, a lot
It
slower.
took longer to start it sometimes than to empty the tank.
And the jet dump's great. If you couldn't get all the shampoo out of your hair, you can stick your head in there. And it wasn't purchased new. The utility truck was purchased used but that was bought to serve a variety of roles. One, it can pull the boats for the water rescue team. It can pull what we now have as the ATV for brush fires, and it was also used to get manpower to the calls, people power, sorry, and has a lot of equipment on it for water rescue with the life jackets, the gear, the ropes, and everything else on there, in addition to a light tower that was upgraded on it after the fire company bought it. So that's provided lighting in a lot of scenes, and you'll see other pictures where that's used to get the boat out into the water for the water rescues. And then in 2004, the first KME truck. It was an engine rescue. It was basically considered a squad because it had rescue equipment for vehicle rescue. It had all the Hearst tools on it, and also full firefighting capability. So that truck could go for a house fire, could go for a vehicle fire, could go to a vehicle accident. It's very flexible. It is a bigger truck, and one of the tough things with it is getting around some of the tight roads or tight driveways in the township. But very versatile, as you see. But a fully enclosed cab, so basically you're in the back, there's less chance of people falling off the truck. I know one of our former chiefs, Paul Schneider, when he had been in Colmar, he had been in a truck as an officer when the truck had a rollover accident. And fortunately, in the FMC engine, we were coming back up Old Skippack one time from a training at Camp Wawa Road, and I was driving it, and there was a car coming in close to the yellow line, and I moved over a little, and my wheels went off a little bit into the ditch, but just kind of kept it up, rode it out, got back out of the ditch, and of course they all razzed me. I cleaned all the mud off and had to take the ribbing for it. But Paul was sitting in the officer's seat having flashbacks to his rollover accident, so I don't think he was ever the same after that. And then the water rescue group, originally a number of companies around had boats. Springmount, Lower Frederick Fire Company had boats. We had gotten a boat. But there was seen that there was still a greater need because of the flooding along the Perkiomen and sometimes the isolation of it. And then for each of the companies to try to maintain a water rescue group, it was kind of seen that it was more effective to basically centralize that. So through community donations and donations from a couple of individuals that geared it towards the water rescue team, additional materials and equipment was purchased, including two 14-foot inflatable boats equipped with the Mercury outboard engines, and dry suits for the crew, and safety helmets, and a lot of other rope and hardware. And then, of course, that requires a lot more training. So a number of the guys, I mean, there are a lot of people with different levels of training. I took basic water rescue. I didn't go to some of the other more involved ones, just because I'm getting older. But it's a significant amount of training involved for this, just dealing with operating the boats, handling the equipment, knowing how to approach, how to get to the people, and it's a significant effort. And there's been quite a bit of use of the water rescue team in the floods over the last 5 or 10 years. We'll have some info coming up on this last one. So noted that since 2006, Upper Salford Fire Company's water rescue resources have responded to every major flood in the area, and it's the primary swift water rescue resource for most of northern Montgomery County. And it's noted they don't just respond to our township, but as far away as Bridgeport. And that in 2021, the fire department and the surrounding companies responded to Hurricane Ida with the worst flooding that had been seen. And in the 36-hour period, there were 44 rescues performed over 8 townships. They included people that were trapped in cars, on roofs, and all kinds of other things in the open water clinging to trees and things. So it's especially not a good thing when it's night and it's dark and you're trying to find people and trying to maneuver around the who knows what obstacles. So not an easy task. The last vehicle we had gotten is the 2012 KME pumper. It's similar to the other truck, the other KME, the Squad, except it's shorter and it's primarily designated for firefighting, for house fires and things. It doesn't have as many compartments, it's not as long, so you can get it into driveways and other places better. It just doesn't have all the vehicle rescue equipment on it. There is some, but not as much space as the squad has. And then one of the smaller acquisitions was a command vehicle. Basically, prior to that, the chief always had to drive their personal vehicle to the scenes, and they typically didn't have equipment with them. So, I mean, I know Tom Bergmeyer, his current chief, he had gotten the calls where he'd get to the house and trucks aren't there yet, and there's somebody inside, and he doesn't have an SCBA or other gear to go in and make safe entry. So it was a very risky type scenario. So this was set up so that it has an SCBA, has other gear in there to protect the individual. So if there is an emergency situation with somebody trapped, and the chief's the first one on scene or the officer in charge at that point, they can have gear to protect themselves to go in and start doing something, or at least prep until the rest of the equipment and firefighters arrive. And then as mentioned with the 1966 Dodge Power Wagon, after the accident, and that was taken out of service and eventually sold, it was needed to have some type of method for brush fires. A lot of other companies around had gotten rid of their trucks. Upper Frederick used to have a truck, I think it was made in Switzerland or somewhere. It was massive, had tires this high, looked really awesome, but they had a lot of mechanical problems with it, and it was tough getting parts from Europe for it, so they eventually sold that. So the trend has been towards more, simpler types of things where you can do a lot of the same work. Obviously, you're not going to have as big a water tank and things as you are on like the brush truck, the Dodge Power Wagon and things. But this, if it's a call close to the station, will get dispatched. It has lights and everything on it, and it'll do 45, 50 miles an hour, and it can dispatch straight from the station, or if it's something a little farther away, it'll go out in that trailer pulled by the utility truck to be deployed closer to the scene, and has a pump, water tank and everything on it, and a lot of the hand tools needed for the brush fires. But of course the intent is that the engine or the tanker would get there and park somewhere on the road nearby so that the brush truck could keep going back and refilling the water tank to maintain its operations. Then, of course, the fire company, there's a lot of other events that the fire company does that as part of public service, because we're all members of the community, and part of the things that the fire company's always stood for is kind of a place for the community, bring people together, interaction, and kind of keep that sense of community. And one of the long-standing events has been the Santa Run. So you can see some folks here on the old Ford on engine with Santa greeting some of the children. And just one of the examples of the listing from the Santa Run that's published, so it shows what time the truck's going to be at what intersection, so people knew to bring their children out and be ready. And typically on the Santa Run, they give out candy and oranges, and in a lot of cases they do it also as a food collection for the food bank. People bring canned food, and then the children get their picture taken with Santa, get a candy and an orange. And then just also a full notice for the chicken barbecue. Because at a lot of points it was a unique approach with doing the barbecue chicken down back on the fire pit, and then moving the trucks out of the bay, and basically, I'm sure you've probably all been to one at some point, but basically come around, pull into the bay, place your order, you're given your food, you pay, and you're right out the front, and it just keeps the line going, and was a great takeout type approach, and something that the way the station was designed, it worked very well for it. And then, of course, fire prevention. I think we all always had fun with the fire prevention and just seeing the smiles and the little kids and hearing the questions. And I still remember Lori Smith always saying the question she got was, she'd do the smoke detector and say, "Okay, children, now when do you hear that sound?" And she'd usually get, "When mom's cooking." But the company went to Salford Hills and some of the other churches, church schools around, Salford Mennonite and things, to do the fire prevention. I still remember one, it's funny now, it wasn't funny for the poor child, Chuck Dornish, was we always had one of the firemen put the gear on and go on the breathing air to show the children, and usually get down and crawl at their level, just so they know if there's a fire, this person's there to help you. You don't be afraid of them. And there was this one little child who was kind of nervous and scared, and Chuck put his gear on, and he got down on his knees, and the child was kind of doing better and coming over to him. And at that point, his mask, his airline popped off, and it started hissing loud, and the child ran screaming. And then, of course, one of the critical things is training. And the fire company has it set so people can pretty much do the level of training they want, and nobody's ever asked to do a task or job that they're not comfortable with and who are not appropriately trained for. But some of the primary things, you start with exterior firefighting, then interior firefighting, vehicle rescue, water rescue, ice rescue, hazmat, hazardous materials, and then learn the trucks for pump operations and the EVOC or emergency vehicle operations. And I could have kept this list going for many, many slides. Probably aware of all the things you were through. But when I started, the state had it set like firefighter, exterior, interior, each was like 40 hours, and then they doubled that time to make it 80 hours. So that's the hard part we have. We'll find a young person who's interested in joining, and then they hear it's 80 hours, 80 hours, 40 hours, 40 hours, and they go home and tell their wife, girlfriend, and they're like, what, are you crazy? You know how many weekends and evenings that is? So that makes it a bit difficult to get people in to join. But again, people can join and do the exterior, and you don't have to do all of those trainings. It's not a requirement, but it's just one of those things. The more people want to do, the more they can do. Yes, sir.
In my memory, I remember we were using the AFFF phone.
Okay.
More training than actual usage.
Uh-huh.
And you see all these advertisements on TV about the cancer.
Yeah.
Are you aware of any local firefighters who have experienced that?
I'm not aware of any, but certainly, the PFAS compounds that were in a lot of that foam is a big issue. It's caused a lot of problems, places with groundwater contamination, soil contamination. I don't personally know of anybody that's had bad experiences based upon it, but it doesn't mean they're not out there. And it certainly is a nasty stuff, because like New Jersey just put a limit in place for concentrations of the PFAS compounds in groundwater, and like the other chemicals they look at for drinking water standards are in parts per million and parts per billion. Well, the standard for the PFAS compounds is in parts per trillion. So it's like you're down to counting molecules. So it is very nasty stuff. And a lot of the places like the military bases, they have a big investigation going on over at Willow Grove for the residuals there of what had been used for firefighting foam. Our stuff is probably more pig fat than,
Well, I was stationed at Willow Grove.
Oh, okay, so you got a double duty.
There's a website
Okay.
for people who have served there, and every month maybe somebody dies of cancer.
Wow.
But I mean, there's people who are there full time,
Right.
active duty. But I'm just waiting.
Yeah, it's bad stuff, and they didn't realize it until not that long ago. And then the crazy thing is, some of those compounds are even in pizza boxes, and it's surprising the places they are. So it's just kind of coming to light, and stuff getting taken out of these applications so people aren't put at risk. But yeah, that's certainly an important facet, and the impacts they have.
And the feeling at Willow Grove is that the government is just really dragging their feet on the military
Right.
side.
Yeah.
The civilian housing for
Right.
the base, they've got all their studies and all that stuff.
But the rest,
No, the base is not.
you never experienced any of that, did you, Bob?
No.
Which is kind of sad when the veterans should be getting the best possible treatment and coverage. It's definitely a problem. But good point. And then also note that a lot of the folks are also trained as EMTs, and that people are trained in other aspects of rescue that require even more training and greater degrees of experience. And in addition to the fact that the fire police, even though they're serving in the fire police role, a lot of them are also trained cross-trained as firefighters, and then they have a lot of courses to take for the legal side of the fire police. So some of the different training events, this was a flammable gas training. I think it was over at the Bucks County Fire Academy. So they had propane tank there they could turn on and give you as much flame as you want, and then you have to go up with the hose and shield everybody. 2 lines of guys are approaching it with the hose, and then you got the guy in the middle that has the wrench to go down and close the valve. So we didn't have any marshmallows there then. And then vehicle rescue training, that's taught. There's courses at the fire academies for that, and then also one of the things that's practiced out back here on a regular basis. So anybody has any junk cars you want to get rid of, let the fire company know. They're always looking for subject vehicles. You can get a tax note on it for the donation. So usually the cars will get cut up, they'll get burned up, and then they go off as scrap. So they come back as another one at some point.
Do you need titles when they're donated like that?
They do, yeah, because the scrap guys won't take them if there's not a title.
Can't get rid of your stolen cars that way.
No, I still have the Carvana. This was an old photo. I don't know if folks remember, probably most people remember the Spring Mountain House when it was present on the south side of Spring Mountain. And every year, all the local fire companies and a bunch of others, you see this jacket there, Humane Fire Company, would practice a drill because they had to get water from the Perkiomen up the road and then up the Spring Mountain House driveway to the building. And the fear of being an all-frame structure, it was a major risk if anything ever happened. And just as a recollection of what the place looked like, and you can see the little walkway out the front there, that's where the trucks were parked in that previous photo. But you figure that wood structure, if it got going, you sure as heck hope that there'd be nobody in there because you wouldn't want to be trying to get through that to get to them. Little help with the swimming pool out front to suck some water from, but not enough. And then some of the other emergency calls, such as the water rescues, you can see that's the back end of the utility truck, the Ford, with the boat trailer in the water, and the boat had been out, got somebody, and is coming back up to let them off. But like I said, you got to get a spot where you can get the boat into the water, get access there, where the truck can safely get close enough just to launch the boat, and then to hopefully recover it, not knowing whether water levels are rising, falling, or what at that point. Another older shot of the barn fire. I'm not sure which one this was. I don't know, Barb, you know, or Pat? Anybody on that one? I know at one point, what's the township building? The barn it was a barn. There had been a fire there, and then it was later restored and became the township building. But certainly, numerous other barns had burned in the township. One of the funny things, you can see the guys have the long jackets on. When I did my fire training at the Montgomery County Fire Academy, the first jacket I got was one of those long ones. Now they're shorter, like waist length, and I learned why they shortened up. Because when you have to crawl through the places for the smoke, you're trying to crawl and your knee catches that jacket and you do a face plant. Then you get up and you start again, your knee catches the jacket and you do another face plant. So it was certainly great improvements in the design of the bunker gear to protect individuals and make it more maneuverable and more flame resistant.
They're also wearing the old rubber boots rather than the bunker pants in the picture.
And those boots in the heat were tough. And some of the early pictures, I guess that video they had, there were some early pictures where when the 1929 truck arrived, and there was one guy out there with a tie and a shirt on, manning the hose line. Which, I guess the only thing I could put equivalent, one year when we did the Folk Fest, Chuck Dornish had a kilt on for working at a fundraiser, and we got an accident call down here at Old Skipback and Shankswell Road, Shelley Road, and Chuck had his bunker jacket on and his kilt, and he was out there directing traffic with that. And I'm thinking, yeah, you don't see that every day. I didn't ask him what he had under. Another shot of a house fire and guys on the roof trying to ventilate and get the hose up there and get it into the roof. If you see any you recognize, let me know.
I'm trying to. I looked all around the walls and I didn't recognize any.
Gotcha. But certainly interesting, again, seeing the evolution of the gear, the equipment, and realize how fortunate we are today with what we've got. The only problem is, as we said, with the trucks and other things, the prices just go up and up and up. Vehicle accident, So scenes where you're typically trying to get there, stabilize the vehicle so it can't tip or roll, and then once you have the vehicle stabilized, you're working to cut away the parts that you need to get the occupants out of the vehicle without further harm to them. And then this one where they tried to make the drive-through window on Schwenksville Road there. The one bad snowstorm and the truck went off, and fortunately there was nobody just inside the house there. And so I recall the truck driver wasn't badly injured, I guess just a little embarrassed. And the homeowner probably didn't sleep that great the rest of the night. And some of the other fire activity, as you know, we don't have a ladder truck. They're exceedingly expensive, but we rely on. Harleysville's got a ladder truck, Lower Frederick's got a ladder truck, up in, I think it's Red Hill, other companies around. So the companies kind of work together to make sure we don't need to be redundant on equipment. So again, because of the extreme cost, whereas an engine might cost you $500,000, a ladder is going to be $1 million. And then it's a lot to maintain and everything. So we need to all work together with the mutual aid so that we need a ladder, obviously, for house fires or building fires in the township, but we can count on the neighboring companies, which is definitely better now with a lot of the bridges redone, because you all remember that point when that saying that you can't get there from here was almost too true for Upper Salford. And then some of the key things at the scene are water management and water supply. So you can see sometimes their truck might be in there serving as a pumper to get the water up the road or wherever to the actual fire is. Maybe a truck's tapping a hydrant if there's a hydrant like you see there, and then feeding it on up the line. I remember fire up in East Greenville, our squad sat in the middle of the main intersection at 663 there, and the center of town, I think it was there for like 8 hours. And Skip Davis, great guy, he was running the truck, and that's where we decided that maybe he needed a lawn chair or a chair that folded out of the truck so he could sit down for a little bit there while he was running things. But there was 5-inch hose pretty much going every direction. It looked like a bowl of spaghetti.
Maybe you're not going to tell a bad joke, but I will.
Go ahead.
Back in the 70s, because it was hard to get to some places and we were very small, didn't have a lot of members, we nicknamed ourselves the Upper Salford Foundation Savers.
That's a good one. Yeah, I do the best you can, and like I said, some of the buildings, even by the time you get the call, they're mostly involved in a tough save. And then this was a roof at a house in Springmount. Other vehicle accidents with pole down. And then this one, the combine fire. I said, fire department in New York doesn't get the experience dealing with these. Upper Salford can claim a leg up on the big city fire companies. Even lawnmower fires. I remember we had one, somebody's John Deere, they were out mowing and it caught fire and going up and we were getting there like, okay, at least it's little, you know.
Where was that?
This one, I'm trying to remember. I think that might be down off Old Sunday Town.
That's what I'm thinking too. The old Sunday Town, we just passed that white house.
Right.
Something makes me think that.
Right. Yeah, I think that's where it was. I'm trying to picture the exact location now.
You can see it
Just above the Burby towards Vauxhall, maybe.
You're right. But, yeah, one of those odd things you get in the rural areas. And then another water rescue. You can see using one of the ladder company's ladders out to the car. The one that sticks in my mind was down at the Bergie Bridge down on Old Sunday Town Pike. At one point there was flooding there. They had barricaded the road. Okay, it's good, it's blocked off. We got a call for a water rescue there. We get down there, somebody had moved the barricade going around right into the water. It's up to the top of the door. So we had Lower Frederick's ladder. They helped me put the ladder out, got the people up on the ladder and got them back out. We get back to the station, and half an hour later, we got another call at the same spot. So everybody thinks, somebody drove by, saw that car, and called it in again. But you have to go. We get down there, and sure enough, there's another car parked right next to that one. It's like, you didn't see the water was up to the door on that one? But just silliness. And luckily, the state's now passed laws that people that move barricades or go around the barricades can be liable for the costs and a fine. And typically, for our fire company, if you look at the call volume, somewhere around 200, maybe average calls per year, with a high over 250. Again, it certainly varies. We know all the surrounding companies, they said with post-COVID, I think everybody being locked up, and they went out and finally, hey, I can drive, and they all doing the Mario Andretti thing, and bad stuff's happening. So lots of accident calls, and of course 2022 is just the first part of the year, so representative, but gives you a feel for what's happening. But you figure if there's 250 calls a year, you know, that's a lot of days and a lot of running back and forth, and the need for a lot of volunteer effort to help it. And especially if it's a house fire, you know, you get people there and they might go in, go through one air tank. When they come out, they need a chance to cool down, get something to drink, and replace their tank. So you have to have more people ready to go in. And I said, I don't think anybody ever complained at the fire scene. I've got too many people here. Like you'll see pictures on the news where there's people standing around and it might look like, well, they're not doing anything. But it's better to have the extra people because you got to swap people out, and it takes a lot of manpower to keep folks in on the call. And then coming up is the 75th anniversary celebration. So everybody mark your calendars for May 14th from 11 to 3 here at the firehouse. And there's the old Hawn engine. So everybody got that memorized, printed in your brain? And then one of the last things is about volunteers needed. Just looking at the statistics, I had seen it in the Township News Net magazines and other sites on the web with fire sites. So basically, just to put it in perspective, that in the 1970s, there were 300,000 volunteer firefighters in the state of Pennsylvania. 300,000. And that more than 90% of the state's 2,400 fire companies are all volunteer. And now, there's about 38,000 firefighters in the state of Pennsylvania. So you kind of realize the extra work involved and how much more people then have to, you know, get out to the calls, and then also it creates a higher burnout rate. And then, as they note, that one of the problems too is that, you know, a significant number of the firefighters are over 40 years old. I'm almost there.
Twice.
Don't tell you. Yeah. Did the hair give it away? So again, anybody, you guys, anybody you know, spread the word. The fire company always needs volunteers. And like I said, nobody's ever put in a spot we don't like. If you don't like heights, you don't go up a ladder. If you don't want to go in the building, there's plenty of stuff to do outside. Plenty of things to do with the accidents. So we need firefighters, fire police, auxiliary personnel, and people to help with fundraising. And of course, donations are always appreciated. And we can all make a difference, because one of the problems we've got is if we lose the volunteer force, the alternative is consolidating fire companies and getting paid firefighters, which means huge tax increases, longer response times. And I think we all want to know when we dial 911 that somebody, we're not going to be sitting there half an hour later saying, where are they? So it's an important aspect of it.
Are they still talking about doing a circle down here?
Yes. That's
now, how would that affect you guys?
Not bad. It's designed so that the trucks can easily get around it. And even during the construction, there'll be things made basically for the fire company to be able to get through there, so we won't have to like detour around it. So, but PennDOT keeps pushing it back after the flooding, and they had a lot of other roads to deal with that they didn't plan on, so that kind of delayed us.
That side, that road that's really buckled, that's terrible.
Yeah, and the intersection, I mean, everything we looked at down here, from four-way stop signs to traffic light, but the problem is traffic lights then back everything up. Stop signs, people coming up Shuttle Road come up the hump, and even people coming up Shanksville Road. I guess they look quick and they bolt, and they don't see the cars close on, because there's been, I mean, I kid with Bob Nace on the corner there, said he should open up a used auto parts store. He could collect a lot of things and have a good side business.
It's like that in 663. I said, why don't they just move all the EMTs, the police station, fire company right there, and they don't have to leave?
Yeah, and that's what PennDOT looked at, because they got federal funding. This was one of the worst intersections in the county, and that's why they looked at the volume of accidents, the problems there, and hence, proposed doing the roundabout. It's not like Jersey with the circles where they had the 2-lane ones where you got in that middle lane and you just couldn't get out. It was like no escape. This is just a single one like Zieglersville, and it should alleviate a lot of the problems. But like I said, if there's nobody else there, we all hate sitting at a traffic light when there's nobody coming the other way, and this allows traffic to keep going. But drivers do have to learn to get used to it. I know coming down the one in Zieglersville one time, there was a car came into the circle, went the wrong way in the circle, and cut into the CVS. And they took the shortcut, but it could have been damaging.
What's the time frame on that?
I think last I heard it was going to be later this year, so it could be late summer, early fall. But that's pretty much as changeable as the weather too.
Rick, how many firefighters do we have?
Well, there's all kind of levels of activity. Like I said, I used to make most of the calls when I was around. And a little backstory, I can blame Lori Smith for this, because Lori Smith was in the fire company then. Everybody's seen Lori.
I'm going to record this so when I go to Landis's, I can...
You've seen Lori there in the picture as a firefighter. Lori also does fire police. But when Lori found out I started working from home, she said, okay, hey, we need daytime people. So she kind of drafted me. I said, okay, I want to help. So I joined, and then I still remember my first call after I got through the fire academy on just the first training, and I got up here, and I'm all excited, ready to go. I opened the garage door, and like, where's everybody? And nobody else came, and I didn't even know enough to get on the radio until County, scratch us on this for this point, calling somebody else. And then we had a lot of daytime calls where it was Skip Davis, because Skip was retired, so he was around a lot. And it would be Skip and I remember riding with him in the FMC engine over to Springmount, and we're thinking, we're both praying, okay, please don't let it be big, and please let the other guys be coming. But, active, I guess there may be like 30 firefighters on the rolls, and obviously we all get to different number of calls. Sometimes if I'm around, I'll go. If I'm away for work or got something I can't leave work for, I don't get there. Or if my knee's telling me, oh yeah, you're 63 now, it's sometimes I get up here maybe and it's like, wow, I missed the trucks. These guys are fast. And then that's what the utility truck's also good for us slower guys as I get older. With the engine and the squad and the tanker might be out, but yeah, they left the utility. I can still go. Any other questions? See, I minimized the joke.
When did they put the bridge hook up so you guys could draw water?
Yeah, as each of the bridges were redone, we worked with PennDOT to get them to put those drafting pipes there, because it's a heck of a lot faster to be able to pull up and just connect to that. You still have to suck the water up that far, so you're limited on how high they can be or whatever, but it's still a lot quicker.
Where all you have that?
There's one on Hendrick Station Road, there's one on Springmount Road, and there's one down on Salford Station Road.
How does that work when the water's like that?
Yeah, that's a problem, because if the water drops below that screen on the bottom of that, you're done. You're going to suck air, you're not going to get anything. And that's why we've been fortunate to the extent that the Shelley Square Shopping Center has 2 hydrants, and now with the EPA putting the water line in up the Baghurst Drive for the water supply for the people that have contaminated wells, we will, when that's operational in the end of the summer, have 4 hydrants down at this end of the township for that. But we always joked. I remember we went up to Salford to get beverages for the Folk Fest. We were in the utility, the pickup truck, and there were some guys from Salford Fire Company out there, and they came over and were talking to us. And of course, they start razzing us because there's a hydrant there, and they're like, "You guys probably don't even know what these things are." So we, of course, said, "They're for the dogs, but you don't know how to get water out of the creek down here." Did you have a question or good? Oh, I appreciate you all coming out and take a look at everything that the Historical Society's got set up, and I'll turn it over to Pat.
Well, I want to thank you, Rick, for doing this.